Hi all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer based in Charleston, South Carolina, who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is honored to be presented again this year by Townsend Automotive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. For more than 48 years, the Townsend family of dealerships has been a locally owned company built on service and connection with its customers. And their experienced team can walk you through the car buying process side by side, from test drive to service oil changes and beyond. Townsend goes through a rigorous vetting process to make sure that every pre-owned vehicle adheres to quality standards. And right now, there's plenty on the lot to choose from in various makes and models. Visit townsendhonda.com for current inventory, or if you're in West Alabama, stop in. Townsend Automotive salutes local entrepreneurs, from restaurateurs to podcasters, and they welcome you to be part of a community that does the same. Chef Ashley Boyd's self-written tagline on Instagram is Restaurant Kid for Life. She is the culinary director of 300 East in Charlotte, North Carolina, the family business where she spent long afternoons as a child and later worked in various positions as age allowed. After graduating from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Ashley quickly returned to restaurant work and worked in spots in Chicago, Charleston, and Detroit before coming home to Charlotte. In September 2015, in addition to her work at 300 East, she took on the pastry chef position at Heritage Food and Drink in Waxhaw. And during her 2-year tenure at Heritage, the dessert program was recognized by Southern Living as one of the 10 best in the South. Ashley has been featured in numerous publications, including Food and Wine, and she is highly respected by her industry peers as not only an accomplished chef, but an inspiration and influence for the region's cuisine. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Ashley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to be here. Number one, because I got some treats. I got a Cersei. And Sherry Castle, if you're listening, this is all because of you. So, Ashley, you made me some cheese straws.
I did make you cheese straws.
Please tell me why. Besides the fact that I'm really resisting wanting to munch them on air right now, but
I made them because I was so entertained by the conversation that you had with Sherry about cheese things. Mm-hmm. We all call them different things.
And what do you call these?
We call them cheese straws or cheese biscuits. Mm-hmm. Go back and forth. And I don't know of anyone who made them like my grandmother did. And that's how I make them.
Okay.
And I think they're really good.
So without revealing all the secrets, can you tell me what are a couple things different about your cheese straws or cheese biscuits versus the ones that you've tasted from others?
So my grandmother's and mine are cut into rectangles and marked with a fork. So they are like little ridged rectangles. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen them made that way. I've seen them piped or cut in rounds. But I think there's something about that shape that creates more texture when it bakes because you have thin parts and thicker parts.
Yes, and get those little crispy corners when you don't with the coin.
Yeah.
Now, my grandmother did the coin, but then she put fork hash marks in the top. So we got some crunchy textures.
Got it.
Yeah,
That
so
would
it was a
work, too.
neat combo.
Yeah.
I grew up in Charlotte, and so I'm sitting in just a real reality, crazy, mind-bending moment here in 300 East because cheese straws are part of my past. 300 East is part of my past, and this is where you grew up too. So I wanted to come and speak to you today because we all have nostalgia about the places that we grew up in or we have avoidance of, but they're significant to us, right? And 300 East was one of the first restaurants that I chose myself. I remember coming here in college with a girlfriend. We'd drink dressed up drinks, at the bar and had a beautiful, fruit plate, and we were very adult. And it was always a place to come for lunch or something as I grew up. But in this work as food writing, we learn words like relevance and current and things like that. And so I never really expected in my work to end up here because how many years has this restaurant been open?
In this location, 36 years. Yeah.
And you were here from age 13?
Yeah. And before that, we were another sort of iteration. We're down the road, and we were part of that old Charlotte sort of small little chain of restaurants called the White Horse. I don't know if you remember
I remember
that.
the White Horse, yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you do as a kid in here when you knocked around like in your teen years? What are some of the things that you were conscripted into doing?
I started with hosting. And I was really terrible at it.
You just couldn't figure out where to put people at the tables?
I think I just didn't take it that seriously to apply myself to wanting to do it well. I was just interested in a little bit of extra cash.
Well, the truth comes out. So, but under your leadership, this restaurant is just as current as it ever has been. And it has to come from a place of seriousness. So when did you decide to get serious about the restaurant business?
I went to school in Chicago for fine arts, as we already talked about before. And I spent the summer after I graduated looking for a job doing art conservation, paper conservation, or sculpture conservation.
So wearing white gloves. That's what
hazmat
you wanted
suit.
to. Yes. No breathing on paper.
Yes. And it was really competitive to try to find that type of job. And after a summer of looking, I decided to go with what had become sort of a side interest for me, which was food. So I got a job in a restaurant, and it was just all over.
Once you clocked back in, you were like, oh, I remember this feeling. But, you have a background in pastry, and you're really known as a pastry chef. You are the culinary director here, otherwise known as the main chef, the executive chef here at 300 East. So you work with sweet and savory, but you also work with a pastry chef. Her name is Lainey, right?
Yeah.
But when you're doing pastry, there is an art to it, and there's a precision. I think about that. I would not imagine art conservation but there's a through line, right, of precision when it comes to pastry.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I did work at a few conservation gigs along the way in my last couple of years of college. It was something that intellectually I loved the idea of, but as I got farther away from that, I realized how much I really did not like it because I'm not necessarily a precision person. When I do pastry, I think I'm much less the, sort of stereotype or whatever of the very patient, precise scientist pastry chef. So I need a little bit more, I guess, surprise, the unknown, time pressure. I don't know what it is. Like I need more
Well, you get that on
Yeah.
the line.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
decide
yeah.
to cook or you're expoing
I mean,
or
I love
something like that.
pastry. Like,
Yeah.
I loved it, and it was very easy for me to translate that art background into what I was doing there. But I wouldn't have done well if I were like doing classical French pastry or, you know, chocolate work or something like that. Like that kind of patience and precision and tiny attention to detail has a lot of similarity to the art conservation
Right.
work. And I didn't enjoy standing still like that and focusing intently on one little spot.
Tempering chocolate is a delicate, very complicated thing.
It is.
I mean, you have to really care about the weather. Yeah. And you have to care about the weather in pastry, but what were some of the inspirations that made its way into your work when you started developing your own dishes, not just cooking the work of others, which you have to do at the beginning?
Right. My inspiration always, once I sort of got comfortable and in a groove with that being my medium, it was always what was being presented to me, what was being grown by the growers that live around here and work in this area.
That's right.
product.
Southern Fork listeners, I prompted her to say that. Yes. It's always the most inspiring. The reason I find these people because they are inspired by place. Yeah. And so when it became time to come back, what inspires you about this breadbasket of the North Carolina Piedmont? I mean, I spend a lot of time in the Raleigh area, but, you know, I grew up in Charlotte, and there's some really great, I grew up with a vegetable garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a great growing environment. I mean, we have access to so much stuff here, but I didn't move back knowing that that was going to be my inspiration. I moved back because my mom called and said that her GM was transitioning out of this line of work and she was going to need a GM. So I moved from Detroit, where I was living at the time, and started GMing here and also doing all the desserts for 5 years.
That's a lot. So you worked 24/7. You had to work the floor. That's like a baptism by fire, though. But when you came back in, there has to be a vibe of a restaurant, and there is a vibe here. Why do you think restaurants are important? We've gone through a period of fighting for restaurants to survive. Yeah. And you just told me off mic, you said, yeah, we were going to do whatever it took. So not only is just this a family business, but you're a spokesperson for the restaurant industry too. Why do you think restaurants are important?
That's a really hard question for me to answer because this place, this restaurant has always been my home. So I know what it means to me. But I also know that we've had so many customers over the years, regulars who this is their happy place, you know? It's somewhere they can come that's not their home and celebrate, see their friends, and people watch and just sort of be out in the world. And
when it's home to you, and it is a former house, you have to change the menu sometimes, Ashley, and this is a big deal. Can you talk about moving that as a restaurant with a following and moving those menu items slowly off the menu?
Yeah. I can talk about that. We do have a really loyal following. We've been here for a long time, and people get attached to things.
Date nut bread sandwiches.
understandable.
That was my attachment.
Which one?
The date nut bread
Oh, yeah.
sandwiches with the cream cheese.
Oh, that's been gone a long time.
I know, but
that was gone before I came back here full time.
But that was my attachment, personally.
Oh, man. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So we actually have things on the menu, though, that have been on the menu since 1986. A couple of them are from the White Horse. So that's 1973.
Right.
Because there are changes we can make, and then there are changes that upset so big of a chunk of our customers who have really kept us afloat during the rough spots. And there's a gratitude and obligation to them. So when we try to take something off the menu, it disappears, and the noise is at a certain level. We do capitulate and put that back on. We may make a few little tweaks just to line it up with current tastes and standards, but our menu is made up really of a core of items that have been on 10 or more years.
And what is the number one item that you would think, or number one or two?
The number one seller? The number one seller is the ahi tuna salad across all three menus, brunch, lunch, dinner. People are so attached to that.
Tell us the build of that.
So it's salad greens, carrots and beets raw, fried wontons, 3 different dressings. There's a shoyu glaze and a wasabi cream and a sesame vinaigrette, avocado, and then seared sesame crusted ahi tuna on top.
And it is just a combination of flavors that 100% works. And it also sounds very 90s.
It's very 90s.
That wasabi cream, right? So, I mean, you're about to get a whole new generation of people that are going to feel really good about this because it feels so retro to them.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, you're very inventive in the specials. So you have some people that trust you and want to try whatever you want to make, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that are your new inspirations right now?
Let's see. We've been doing a lot of pastas, handmade, using whatever amazing vegetables are being thrown our way. And those are always fun, especially for the cook, because you do make the same things over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, 100 sets a night of tuna is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? Soft shell crabs right now.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing a lot with. And it's fun to have this sort of seasonal rhythm and get to apply a different treatment to it each time spring rolls around or whatever. And having that core menu, which is even more pared down since March of 2020, out of necessity, it almost gives us more room to play with those features.
So now this is your legacy. This restaurant is your legacy, and you've invested so much time into it. What is it that is inspiring? Because you have to come back, and as a kid who has a family business, right? You can either go to embrace that or you can run the other way from that. So you're definitely embracing that, but it's got to come from a creative place.
It does.
What's inspiring you?
That's, again, a really hard question. It's so much in my blood. It's everything about this business I love. Like, I love taking out the trash. I love creating beautiful food, and if I'm not doing that, I'm not living my whole life, but I love all of the other little things too. I mean, I wake up every day and think about work and what has to be done and all of the different problems to solve and, the people that I work with and how to make them happy. And it's just everything about it.
It just feels good. Yeah. And that's a really interesting juxtaposition in a place like Charlotte, which doesn't have that very often sense of community, right? So in a community that is spread into neighborhoods, I think this neighborhood is very, well, number one, it's very iconic for Charlotte, and it's old Charlotte. But that sense of community, do you feel that among other restaurateurs that you know? I know it's such a big city that we've got different concentric circles or crossing over into Venn diagrams of people, but...
Yeah, I do. I think, of course, like the people that I consider my contemporaries and colleagues in my network were not the first round of people to do great things in the culinary world here in Charlotte. But I do feel like a huge connection to, Chris Coleman and Greg Collier and Rob Clement and Joy Turner, and I'm going to leave people out, William Disson. And
it's okay. It's not an Oscar speech, so it's okay. No one's going to be super mad.
Yeah. So. There's a whole group of of folks there that I feel like there was sort of a big, like, maturing at the same time into a cohesive food community. And that group of people is always going to be super special to me. And then the new talent and energy, people doing great things, just like coming at such a rapid pace. Like it's hard to even keep up, but it's amazing to watch.
When people listen, I have a lot of cooks that listen on the other side of this. And I've got a lot of restaurant people and I've got a lot of people that go to restaurants. But restaurant people, I often say, until you decide to share and build each other up, you're not going to have a restaurant community. And that's something that I have felt for years in Charlotte, that people feel like they're trying to compete against those bank dollars, those steakhouse dollars, and there's not an identity. If you could name the identity of what Charlotte food is, do you have an answer to explain that?
Well, first, I don't know if I feel the same way about the competitiveness. I do think we have a supportive community
now, but I mean, in the past, I felt like...
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Okay.
Because...
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say maybe pre-2012, pre-2010.
Right.
It did feel like there were a lot of different people, or at least, handful, doing great things in their own bubbles. And I think it maybe is just a question of scaling up, like you have to have a certain level of activity and a certain number of people trying to get better what they do and make the restaurant scene better and more exciting before you reach that, that sense of common purpose and community. And everybody's got their niche. So
how would you explain to somebody outside the city what Charlotte food is? Because I need you to fix that for me so that I can write it down and steal it.
Okay. Charlotte food, and I'm speaking about the businesses that are solely, Charlotte, like not
independent
chains
restaurants
coming in.
Yes.
Is very much about place, like you were saying. Like I think that we all know what we have here to take advantage of, as far as the sort of wealth of ingredients and, the proximity to those on every side of us, that's there for us to utilize and highlight. And because of that, there's room for so many different cuisines and personalities. It's not, I don't think anyone feels limited to have a certain type of menu like they did in the past. Like there was a time when you couldn't be successful as anything but a steakhouse.
Right. And there was a time when you're trying to educate diners because, Charlotte didn't have a huge dining scene. We had a huge Greek diner scene and then a few nice restaurants when we were growing up. And then we had a lot of chains.
Yeah.
So, it was me finding places like 300 East that I was introduced from my girlfriend who was older and then, a couple of years older than me. And she's like, I came here with my mom and we're going to go. So it just felt really good to find a sense of place. And 300 East really has a sense of place. If you had one piece of this building, which has a beautiful front courtyard, different rooms, old beautiful booths, what part of it, if you just had that one element, architecture element, would be indicative of this place most?
As far as the building goes, I really love the silhouette of it. And it is very typical of the type of homes that were built in this neighborhood and on this street at the turn of the century. It's got this kind of like, I don't know, I should know what you call it because my dad's an architect, but the roof almost has like a barn-like.
It's a hip roof.
Okay, hip roof. Thank you.
I think.
And inside, it's been rehabbed, turned from a single-family home to a multi-family home and then to a restaurant. But the most unique detail has definitely always been the signs that my grandmother carved for the bathrooms.
I love it. We were talking about how the pandemic really, off mic, how the pandemic really kind of distilled things for us. So coming out of this crazy, just all-encompassing moment, there was that question about what is making you hungry? What is percolating in the back now that you can kind of maybe take a half breath?
Yeah. And it is exciting to be looking forward to things.
Instead of looking down,
Yes.
head down, just day to day.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. I am really craving and anxious to get my hands on these little plums that my friend Kim Shaw grows on her property. Mm-hmm. She had a bumper crop of them one year, and I got super spoiled and very attached to them. And every year since then, something's gone wacky, like they didn't produce as much, or there's a late frost or whatever. She's fairly confident she's going to have them this year.
God.
They're methley plums, and they're tiny and tart. And when you cook them, they taste like cherries. So amazing. So I'm excited to.
And those will go
work with
sweet
those.
and savory. Oh my goodness. I can
Yeah.
see some beef or
Pork
lamb.
belly.
Yeah,
Yep.
all kinds of things. Oh, well, I'm coming back. And that would be a summer crop for sure. Now I'm hungry too. That avocado toast that I had is long gone. So what is one aspect of this job that you were born into, that you finally accepted and embraced, that really meshes like a puzzle piece with the natural aspect of your personality?
I am a creative person, and I love that part of it, but I'm also someone who needs a new challenge thrown at me every day to keep from getting bored or distracted. Mm-hmm. And in this business and in this restaurant, every single day is different. Mm-hmm. Every single day. Like, I know I'm going to get a surprise. And it might not be a fun surprise, but I know there's going to be a problem to solve, and it's going to be a different problem every day. That's like an engine for me. Mm-hmm. I like creating efficiencies and solving problems and finding new ways to do things better. Mm-hmm. It's just something that really keeps this work and me in line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very grounding. Yeah. Right. But also, I have to ask, I just have to pause on that for a minute or dig in a little bit. You never felt like cloning that? So many people just, build.
There have been propositions and suggestions, and maybe at one point a little bit of serious thought about doing that. I think that between me and my mom and our partner, Mike, one is enough. Mm-hmm. One is enough. It's more than enough to keep us, at maximum stress level and
engaged,
more than enough
and
work
creative.
to keep us busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're good.
Okay, good. Good. I like that. What is one thing, quick fire, keeping you up at night?
Definitely, I'm sure a lot of people would say this, but the effects of climate change and what's, coming down the line for the next few years and the next generation, in relation to everything in all parts of the world, but, in particular, what that means for our food systems, and how hard our smaller guys are working to try to adapt to that and find ways to work in that type of environment. And what an uphill battle it feels like.
Yeah.
I never know selfishly, if this amazing thing that I tasted or cooked with last year, if I'm ever going to see it again. Sometimes it feels like that. It's
it
just
does.
very precarious.
Yes. And mixing with the intense pressure of development all over the South, especially, it's disheartening for me.
Yeah.
I have to remember to ground down and look for the good stuff.
For real. Yeah, because you got to keep going, right?
Got to keep going. Yeah. So, in all of this work, I always get fed, and your mom was feeding me before you were back from college. And then I've left and come back and made this a stop. And I would like to repay virtually the favor. I have a magic picnic basket, and I only reserve it for Southern Fork guests. With it, I can time travel. I can go back and ask someone to make just one more taste if you have a favorite meal that you wish you could try again. I can cook a little bit. My cheese straws will never look like that. But I might make you a pound cake, or I don't know, some fried okra or something else really delicious.
That's actually on my list.
Oh,
so
good.
That's perfect.
Excellent. So I'd love to bring you some of your favorite things. So just let me know. What can I put in the basket?
I think that there are some things that you in particular would be able to help me with, knowing that where you live. One thing is one of your previous guests, Ricky Moore. Mm-hmm. When you interviewed him, it made me develop like a permanent craving for little fish fried hard. I'm going to be eating that. So I need to go and visit him soon.
We'll get Ricky Moore to make some fried hard small fish. I know after editing that was pure torture. I was like, I can't get this right now. I'm in home and I don't do this. Yeah.
Another one is my first taste of beef tartare from Peninsula Grill when I used to work there.
Oh, yeah.
I was a vegan. And that made me just not anymore. Like, it was over after that. Sorry.
That's pretty amazing.
Can't do this around here, but going crabbing and getting some blue crabs and cooking them and picking them and making crab cakes and crab stuff out of them right away and eating them the same day. So anything you could do with that would be great. There was a dish that I had at 11 Madison Park, and I was texting with Chris Coleman about this today because I couldn't remember like one specific part of it, but it was caviar Benedict with some kind of really just delicate custard. It was almost like a set hollandaise. And spring onions and smoked crispy fish skin sprinkled over, standing in for the ham, with tiny English muffins. And I will never forget eating that. So that would be great. And I think last, my granddad's fried cornbread and my grandmother's blueberry pie, deep dish blueberry pie.
Wow. Yes. Okay.
Tall order, but I have faith in you.
I can do it. And this is a really good meal. So I'm going to be sneaking some leftovers for sure. Well, this is a great place. And I'm so glad that it's here, and I'm glad that you're here. So if people want to learn more about Ashley and 300 East and really get into understanding what real Charlotte is, you can go to the Southern Fork. I am going to have links there, southernfork.com, as well as images so you can see the face behind the voice. If you like what you hear, I basically paid Ashley off to give you all kinds of suggestions for all kinds of suggestions for other episodes today. And there are more than 275 in the archives for you. So please dig in, please subscribe, and if you will, let somebody know about this, because that is the way really great food happens. We talk to each other, we cook for each other, and we tell each other what we just had that was so good. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Good. Hello and welcome to Talking with a Mouthful. 300 East is located in the Dilworth neighborhood of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I, as a Charlotte native, will be the first to tell you that Charlotte changes almost every time I go home. And if somebody hasn't driven, quote, uptown or center city in a while, they'll find themselves kind of turned around, because Charlotte is really known for changing quickly and not really maintaining so many of its buildings. In other words, knocking down and building new. That is not the case in Dilworth. So if you are looking to head to Charlotte for any reason in the foreseeable future, it's a great neighborhood to explore. Not only is there 300 East, there are multiple other independent restaurants that are delicious around that area. The homes are really, really cool. There are walkable sidewalks, little gift shops, independent businesses of all kinds, and everything is pretty shaded and tree lined. It's very easy to get to from Center City, and it's definitely worth a visit. If you are in Charlotte, then you know that's a great neighborhood to go for dinner. So anyway, it was a wonderful excuse for me to visit one of my old stomping grounds, Dilworth neighborhood. I never lived there. It was out of my price range, but it was a great place for me to go to dinner. And of course, sometimes that was 300 East. So until next time, thanks so much for listening, and I will talk with you later.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?